Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rodney Lusk. I serve on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors and also serve as chair of the Council of Governments and its Board of Directors. It's my honor to welcome all of you here to this joint meeting of COG and the WMATA boards. I will officially call the COG board meeting to order. And as a reminder, this meeting is open to the public and is being live streamed on both the WMATA and COG websites. And I'd like to thank Chair Santos for hosting us here today for this meeting.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Santos, Chair of the Metro Board of Directors. Thank you, everyone. I see quite a few familiar faces in the audience for joining us today. Our Metro Board of Directors meeting is called to order. It is a pleasure to have our boards come together today for what I hope is a pivotal point for our region. Our long-term prosperity depends on having a strong, resilient, and dependable metro, the world-class transit system that our communities deserve. And together, our COG and Metro boards are committed to delivering sustainable, dedicated funding. With this proposed action today, we are urging our regional and state partners to join us in securing Metro's future and ensuring it remains a pillar of mobility and opportunity for the entire Washington metropolitan regional area. As is our practice here at Metro, we're going to begin this meeting with a safety contact, and I will ask our Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, Jamie Johnson, to do the honors.
Good morning, chairs, and welcome to all members of both boards this morning. Delivering safe service is a core value here at Metro. Metro owns hundreds and thousands of assets ranging from rail cars and buses to rail stations, bus garages, and thousands of bus flags, HVAC systems, escalators, elevators, bridges, tunnels, electricity substations, office buildings, and parking lots. We have specialist teams that monitor and maintain all these assets 24/7 to ensure all assets are operating safely. We prefer preventative maintenance, where we take scheduled action before an asset experiences a problem, or sometimes teams respond to repair an asset. The cycle of maintenance activities is constant, but there are times of year when we pay special attention to our assets, for example now, when temperatures are variable and there is a risk of severe weather. We have a robust set of procedures to ensure our assets remain safe and reliable, but should you, as a customer or user of our services, see that an asset needs repair or needs looking at by one of our teams, speak to a Metro employee, your bus operator, a station manager, or a police officer, or report the matter via wmata.com or by calling the customer relations team on 202-637-1328. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm going to pass the microphone back over to Chair Lusk.
Thank you very much. I'll note that when our boards last met in May of 2024, we passed a joint resolution establishing the DMV Moves Initiative and Task Force with the goal of identifying the vision and needs for a more integrated regional transit network. Over the last 18 months, the task force, along with the Government Partners Advisory Group, the Community Partners Advisory Group, 6 work groups, and Metro and COG staff have spent countless hours examining how our transit systems can better work together and the funding required to sustain the system into the future. A few weeks ago, the task force met to review and adopt the plan recommendations and resolution. Today, we are here reviewing the final plan recommendations and resolution as recommended by the task force. If you've not done so, please, I encourage you to go ahead, read through the resolution before you are asked to vote later in today's meeting. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce and thank our task force co-chairs, first COG Vice Chair and DC Councilman Charles Allen, and then second, Paul Smedberg, WMATA's Vice Chair, for all of their leadership and dedication to this initiative. I'd also like to introduce our facilitator, Nick Donahue, who has been an integral part of this project. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Santos.
Thank you. On today's agenda, we will be reviewing the final DMV report and the recommendations in the plan. But before we hear from our task force co-chairs, we are going to start with public comments. And throughout this process, many stakeholders have had the opportunity to provide input and feedback through our advisory groups and task force meetings and public comment periods. Interested members of the public will be given the opportunity to make brief comments on issues under consideration by COG and Metro boards. Speakers will have 90 seconds to provide comments, and the comment period will be no more than 15 minutes today. Any public comments that were submitted in advance have been shared with COG and Metro board members. I will now call the names of those individuals who have signed up to provide public comment today. So let's see. And my pronunciation of your last name is contingent on your ability to spell it in a way that is legible. So please, apologies in advance. Bill, and I cannot read your, Orleans.
I think I spelled it correctly. I just probably wrote it in illegibly. 90 seconds. I was the only one that I noticed signing up. I might claim the whole 15 minutes off. I'm the only person signed up.
No.
While I might agree with much of what's in here, I don't think it goes far enough. But while I might agree with much of it in here, I'm essentially going to argue that it's invalid. I've been doing this since May of 2024. Of the 17 advisory group meetings and the 25 working group meetings, I know nothing. Nobody other than the participants in those meetings knows nothing about what took place in those meetings. There are no minutes that have been provided, not even summaries of discussion. I know anecdotally from a participant in some of those meetings that there has been some issues which were contested. No one knows this among the public. I presume some of you may know it, but only the participants in those various working group and or advisory group or work group meetings would know this. This is essentially invalid. One of your number, the senator from Virginia, and I apologize, I don't know if he's here or not, made a very good suggestion at one of the early meetings, and that is to essentially regionalize the locally operated bus services. That should have been pursued. Had people been able to participate among the public in those meetings, maybe that could have been pursued. That discussion could have been continued. I'd like to suggest that the only way to secure dedicated funding ultimately is not to rely on the jurisdictions, it's to amend the compact, granting WMATA its own taxing authority, and further amending the comment so that the board of directors of WMATA would be elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orleans. Next speaker who signed up is Bill Pugh.
Can you hear me if I don't bend down? Okay, thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Bill Pugh. I'm the Transportation Climate Director for the Coalition for Smarter Growth. And CSG was a member of the Community Advisory Committee to the DMV Moves Task Force. And we thank all of the elected officials and staff at all levels for your hard work on this initiative. And we commend WMATA for identifying and implementing more efficient programs and cost-saving measures. Broadly speaking, we strongly support the additional funding commitment of $460 million per year. And we urge timely efforts to identify and pass dedicated funding for our region's transit agencies. In addition to the Metro Rail needs, we ask for your support on the bus prioritization components of the DMV Moves plan. This is a tough time, we know, for local and state governments and with economic uncertainties, but we've seen some good proposals for new funding sources, such as those of the SJ28 subcommittee in Virginia, just as one example. There are other proposals that should be studied regionally. I think some other stakeholders may be speaking on these. And just want to say that our world-class transit network is a key factor in our region's economic competitiveness, and it's critical for COG's adopted Region Forward vision. This winter, the coalition will be teaming with other regional stakeholders to push our legislatures to secure the $460 million and other needed local transit operating assistance. And we ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next speaker is Jason Stanford.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. My name is Jason Stanford. I'm the president of the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. Before we begin, I'd just like to thank Clark Mercer, Randy Clark, and the members of the DMV Moves Task Force for convening this group and bringing everyone to the table. The Alliance was a member of the Community Partners Working Group, and we appreciate that inclusion. I know it's not easy to navigate the various goals and priorities of so many regional partners, elected officials, and transportation professionals. So thank you for undertaking this important effort. The financial sustainability of WMATA and the region's entire transit system are critical to the quality of life, sustainability, and economic competitiveness of our community. I think we've made a lot of great progress here, but I do think there are still some questions that the region should continue to look at. Things like operating cost growth for WMATA. If their FY26 budget forecast holds, gross expenses will have increased an average of 5.7% a year over the last 3 years. Changing the 3% cap growth that's being put forward in this proposal to a per unit basis could allow some of that ongoing unsustainable cost growth that will impact every jurisdictional partner in our region. So I think there are still some things, but I do want to say that overall, this has been a good process, some step forward to addressing a lot of these issues, and appreciate the opportunity and look forward to continue to work together as a region to invest in our transit system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanford. Next speaker is Elizabeth Kiker.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Kiker, rhymes with biker, and I am from the Washington Area Bicyclist Association. I am really, we were really excited to be included as part of this process. We're really glad the process happened. We also thought sort of the floor, the basis, the thing we were gonna do was commit to a permanent solution for WMATA's capital needs, because it is so vital to our whole region and to the cyclists here that we have access to transit, both bus and trains. And so we were like, wow, we're gonna get vehicle miles traveled tax or congestion pricing as part of this. And it didn't feel like that was it. And even the sort of floor, it feels like we're close to, but even at the last meeting, it was like, well, how much am I gonna pay? And how much are you gonna pay? And how much is too much? And still the things that we were saying at the first meeting. So we're just really excited for the process and hope that we can get to a permanent solution for WMATA's funding, which is vital.
Thank you, Ms. Kiker. The last name I see here is Rick Ryback.
Good afternoon. Rick Ryback, Director of Just Economics. 18 months ago, the DMV Moves Task Force was created to provide sustainable, equitable, and bondable funding for transit in our region. And most of us would agree that those who benefit from transit should help pay for it. And yet those who are perhaps the biggest beneficiaries might never ride a bus or a train. They own land, particularly commercial land, near transit stations and stops. Congressional studies have shown that transit creates literally billions of dollars around its metro stations and stops. The lion's share of that value ends up as a windfall to whoever's lucky or shrewd enough to own that land. These are some of the most affluent and powerful people in our region. I am mystified that the task force has spent so little time thinking about how to return transit-created land value back to the transit authorities that create it. This would be not only equitable, but as a bonus, it would induce more affordable transit-oriented development around transit stations and stops, thereby reducing sprawl and making transit more efficient. So I'm hoping that as we go forward, you will look into returning transit-created land values to the transit agencies that created them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryback. And I think that's the last name that I see here. So thank you everyone for your comments, and we will keep those in mind as we consider the resolution before our boards today. Next on the agenda, I'd like to ask our General Manager, Randy Clark, to provide an update about WMATA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make this very quick because I know we want to spend most of our time with everyone in the room having discussion on the resolution. Just want to take a quick moment on behalf of the Metro team to really thank all of our partners in the room for not only your participation in DMV Moves, but just your ongoing support of Metro. It wasn't that long ago, we had some very significant operating financial challenges, reliability, public safety challenges. And I'm really happy to announce that we won the APTA Agency of the Year award this year, which is the top-rated transit agency in North America. And I just don't want to lose the opportunity to say thank you. That is, yes, the team at Metro has worked very hard. We have a fantastic board working very hard, but your partners and our jurisdictional supporters or investors are also just as important to make that happen. So I just want to really have that moment to recognize you all, and it's really a team award. There's some other highlights here as well, but you've heard a lot of these. Public safety was a very significant challenge several years ago, and I'm happy to report we're currently at an 8-year low for crime and on pace to have the lowest crime year in the history of Metro. Fare evasion continues to go down, which is really important for our overall budget, and we continue to reduce capital expenses and implement projects in a more cost-efficient way as well, ending the fiscal year at $120 million under budget, of which most of that we're pushing right back into the capital program, further reducing the jurisdictional subsidy that we started this process with. Also want to take a moment and just really thank Clark Mercer and the entire COG team. When we started this effort, Clark and I were just starting to get to know each other, and I don't think there's been a better, quite frankly, partner that leaned in on behalf of COG. So just really want to recognize, Clark, you and your entire team. I think it's another good example of our region. When we want to work together, we really can work together. So just thank you for that. Nick Donahue, who has asked 9 million questions of us, and that's his job, and has done a really good job of that. Just Nick, thanks for your leadership on that. And then lastly, I just want to recognize, Tom, Allison, and our entire WMATA team for the work on DMV Moves, but also to the men and women that work every day at Metro delivering really good, safe, frequent, reliable service for the region. Even with the federal government shutdown, ridership continued to grow year over year. And I think that is a fantastic sign that all days a week, all hours of the day, demand continues to grow for this incredibly important asset that drives, as the speaker said, the quality of life and the economy of our region. So just again, thank you for all of your work on this. We look forward to kind of wrapping this part up today. And of course, this means the job is not done. The job is actually, in a lot of ways, starting the first inning today. And we just want to be here to support you all as you work towards solutions in the upcoming legislative session. So thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Now we'll be hearing from our task force co-chairs, Allen and Smedberg, and Mr. Donahue, as they will highlight the key takeaways and recommendations from their report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My name is Charles Allen. I am a member of the Council of the District of Columbia, representing Ward 6, and I'm also the COG Board Vice Chair, and then I've had the honor of co-chairing our DMV Moves Task Force. When we began this process, I think we all were trying to operate under one overarching goal, and that was a reliable, safe, and more seamless transit network is going to be essential to an economically successful region and an enjoyable community for all of our residents to be able to call home. And that makes our work with this DMV Moves initiative so vitally important. Over the last 18 months, COG and Metro have worked with a wide-ranging and diverse coalition of leaders from the region's governments, from transit operators and business and community organizations to help create a unified vision and sustainable funding concept for our transit network. Countless hours of discussion and deliberation have been spent developing the recommendations we're going to be reviewing today. This includes the DMV Moves vision and goals, our transit investment needs, plan and accountability, and transparency measures. The recommendations that are before us today do not include all the things we would ideally want to do as a region. And for some of us, it may not go far enough. For others, it pushes us outside of our comfort zone and maybe feels too much. But we work together as regional leaders not only to build consensus and a shared vision for what our future needs and how we can get there, but also what I believe are the big steps in the right direction to improve our transit system and secure sustainable funding for Metro. And without doubt, after today, there will still remain a lot of work to do. But we simply have never before tackled this many challenges and laid out a vision of how we work as a region to solve them. That partnership and process has asked a lot from a lot of people. And I'm grateful for everybody's engagement, their time and their energy that have put in what we will have in front of us today and a commitment to even more ahead. I'm going to turn now to my co-chair, and I will just also thank him for the work that he did when we started this process. I knew Paul's name, but I didn't really know Paul that well. But I've had a really great opportunity over 18 months to have a great working relationship with Paul Smedberg. He's been a phenomenal co-chair of this, and I really appreciate your leadership and partnership on this. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. And I can say the same in our working relationship as well. So right back at you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paul Smedberg, WMATA Board Vice Chair and Co-Chair of the DMV Moves Task Force. Great to be with you all here today to see the continued commitment of so many partners dedicated to advancing mobility across our region. Since the historic meeting between the WMATA and COG boards that launched the DMV Moves Task Force and its advisory groups in May of last year, we've made considerable progress building consensus on a shared understanding of what it would take to create world-class transit for the DMV. The recommendations being presented today reflect not only months of analysis and stakeholder engagement, but also a common vision for improving mobility, supporting economic growth, and enhancing quality of life for everyone in our region. We have a full and productive agenda ahead with plenty of discussion planned. I encourage everyone to engage actively in today's discussion. And before I turn the floor over to our facilitator, I do want to mention Councilmember Allen and his work on this and the leadership and the idea of when we first had that meeting, the four of us, Clark and Randy, and came up with this idea and you fostering it through the COG process. Also want to recognize Randy and his executive team and all the work that they did. Jennifer Ellison in our board office, Regina Sullivan. Regina actually retired recently, and I'm sure many of you know Regina. And her team, Greg, Charlie, and Ann, and the work that they contributed here to all of this. And of course, Clark and his leadership and invigorating COG to be proactive in really key topic areas. Monica Baruti Nunez and Kayla Joyner, Jack McDougall and Brian Hill. I don't think Brian is here today, but Jack I know is here for co-chairing the task forces. And also I want to mention our regional partners, NVTC. I see Kate Mattice and Joe McAndrew and the Maryland folks and the leadership on their side. And now I'll introduce Nick Donahue, who will start the presentation. And enough can't be said about Nick and the work that he did, because he was really the glue here that kept all of this together. His knowledge, his experience, and everything is really shown, and it was key and valuable to this effort. So thank you, Nick, for all you've done for this task force. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. After those very, very kind words, my name again is Nick Donahue. I'm the facilitator for DMV Moves. I know I have an inordinately large number of slides before you, but I promise I'm going to do my best to stay within the time that we've set in the agenda so that we can get to the important part of today, which is you all discussing what I'm getting ready to talk about. So I'm going to talk first about a little bit of background and challenges that we talked about in the DMV Moves process, and then get into kind of the recommendations of the plan. So just really importantly, we're a growing region, and that's a good thing. But that growth does create challenges towards us meeting some of our long-term goals that we've adopted as a region. We do believe that transit is a key component of helping us meet a number of those types of goals as we move forward, but we do have challenges on the transit front. So as the whole reason we're here today is we have a funding crisis in transit, both at WMATA and in this region. And to be very direct, the key reason we're here on the WMATA side is because the WMATA capital funding, the vast majority of it is flat. It does not grow with inflation. And while we've made a ton of progress since 2018, and I really do think, I was a daily rider back in 2015. And when I come ride the system today, it is unrecognizable kind of at times because of the progress that we've made. But we're at risk though of not being able to sustain and maintain that progress over time because we're running into the debt capacity that WMATA has because of how its capital funding is structured. And so absent any action, the WMATA capital program is going to shrink by $800 million, which will have a significant impact on WMATA's ability to sustain the system. Another challenge that we face as a region, and this is a good thing and at times a challenging thing, is we have a complex network of multiple providers. We have 3 separate jurisdictions before we even get into local governments, and we have 14 transit operators, which means we have to find ways as a region to coordinate to provide that seamless experience that customers need for us to be able to have that connected kind of transit region that we're hoping to have. The 2 bodies that are here today, you all created in May of 2024, the DMV Moves Initiative, as we talked about. That was led by a task force, which was subgroups of this board and supported by 2 advisory groups, one led by Jack McDougall and another led by Brian Hill. Those folks have done a lot of work over the last year and change working on this issue. And what I'm here today is to walk you through the recommendations of the plan, and you have a copy of that at your desk, and you also received it, I believe, about 10 days ago. I want to reiterate something Chair Allen said before I get into those things. This plan does not include everything everyone wanted. And that was because of direction we received from the task force, recognizing where we are as a region. So when we met with the task force, they made it very clear to us. They wanted us to focus on maximizing the existing system and getting as much out of that as we could. The second thing they also made very clear is we were not ready as a region at this time to look at a regional funding solution, that we needed to leave it to each jurisdiction to find ways to solve their transit needs, including their commitments to WMATA. That had some kind of run-along effects, if you will. And so that means in this plan, there's no rail expansion. And that's because we're looking at maximizing the existing system. Because there is no regional funding solution, that means the bulk of what the plan is going to talk about deals with funding at WMATA. There's information and work that has been done looking at a lot of the local transit needs, and that is here. So the decision makers can consider that as they look at how they want to solve their kind of local transit needs. But we did not get into recommending specific projects or other things at the local level because of the direction from the task force about every jurisdiction kind of solving this on their own. We have worked over time to refine and streamline the ask on the WMATA side, and so I'm really pleased to say we've gone from $750 million down to $460 million here today. I'm not going to get into all those details now. There's plenty of background I can provide, but we've done a lot of tough work. As Randy politely said it, asked a lot of hard questions, and I want to give his team credit that we've really been able to kind of push that number down and focus on some of the key issues that really help us maximize the existing system. The task force spent a lot of time working on what is our vision for transit in the DMV region. I'm not going to read this. You've all received this before. Those of you on the task force, you've unfortunately heard me read this out loud, so I'll spare you that kind of experience again. But what we're really saying is transit is really important for this region and our economy and us achieving our goals. And none of that should be, I hope, a surprise to anyone that we have in this room today. As I mentioned, we're not going to talk about expansions in this plan today, but I do think it's really important to recognize that the plan does help us get the most out of our existing system, and what that does is lays the foundation in the future to have discussions about expansion if that's something that the region wants to entertain at that time. As was a previous state official, and one of the things we often heard from WMATA is we can't talk about expansions because we have to get the existing house in order, and there's still things we need to do before we can talk about those expansions, and this plan, importantly, does those things. There are 4 key components to the plan and the recommendations. The first is a WMATA funding plan, and I'm going to get into each of these as we go through the presentation. The second is a partnership for bus priority. The third part is identifying local transit funding needs. And then the final component is a number of action plans where we have worked with all of the transit operators in this region, including WMATA and the local bus operators, to identify opportunities to create a more seamless customer experience through better coordination. So on the WMATA side, let's talk about what the funding recommendations are. So it is recommended that the region provide $460 million a year before FY29 when the debt capacity is reached. Those funds need to grow at 3% a year and be unencumbered there. What I mean by all that is that the funds are bondable and it can support a revolving bond program that over time will allow WMATA to ensure the state of good repair of the system, but also allow WMATA to make investments in the modernization of Metro Rail. And those modernizations will allow for faster service, more reliable service, safer service, and importantly, more cost-effective service. The other thing I really want to stress about this funding is this creates a revolving, sustainable bond program so that we are not back here in 8 or 10 years talking about how do we address the capital needs at WMATA. The 2018 program, as I mentioned, was very effective in delivering the results that it has today, but because of how, it was set up, we built in a way, kind of this situation and this fiscal cliff that we're facing and we're talking about here today. This solution is structured intentionally to avoid that circumstance in the future. The other thing the plan will do is when you combine it with bus priority is it will address core capacity on the Metro Rail system between Roslyn and Stadium Armory. Any of you who are familiar with WMATA and the discussions that we've had about the system know that that is a big issue that we have faced in the past, and this plan, I'm happy to say, will address that moving forward. So a little bit more detail on some of these aspects. This chart here shows you WMATA's projected state of good repair backlog. The green line is what the backlog will be with this new funding, and just to make sure everyone's clear, lower is better. Here, we don't want higher. Orange shows you what that expected backlog would be without the new funding. I want to just hit on one key point before I move on. If you look around 2035, that's that kind of place between 2034 and 2036, that's basically where the backlog was before 2018. I think we all remember the issues that we experienced on the Metro Rail system at that time, and I hope we all don't want to go back to that place. But without new and increased funding for WMATA, that is where they expect they will be in a very short period of time. So we made a lot of progress, but without new effort and sustained effort, it will be easy to kind of backtrack on that progress. When I say modernization, you might wonder, well, what do you actually mean? Like, what does that mean? This is what I mean. Replacing WMATA's old signaling system. To give you a sense of the age of the signaling system, when it was designed, rotary phones were the common form of communication there. I don't think any of you currently have a rotary phone at your house, just to give you a sense of kind of how old that is. And it is getting to the point now where they are running out of vendors to produce some of these types of equipment. I want WMATA personally focused on running service, not on figuring out how to build a signaling system. And so the modernization investments I'm talking about here will be replacing the signaling system, but also doing it with enhancements that will allow for rail automation, which will importantly make the trains faster and lower the operating kind of cost curve of the WMATA system. So I really want to give credit again to Mr. Clark and his team. When we worked on the WMATA funding in 2018, this was something a lot of folks talked about. Show me capital investments that will help control operating cost. This right here is one of those types of investments. So not only does it make trips faster for customers, make them more reliable and safer, it also makes it so that we can run the existing service with less trains and in turn at a lower cost. Because the plan does not have any aspects about rail expansion, we did though talk about how can we make the bus service and the bus routes that we have today function at a higher level for the region. And we developed this concept of bus priority. And I say it's like a kind of concept because it means different things in different places. But what we're talking about here are capital investments that we can make on these high frequency, high ridership bus routes that will help make the buses faster and more reliable for the customers. The other thing, though, that the bus priority investments will do is they will help sustain those benefits over time and help reduce future operating costs on the bus side. So buses, again, no shock to anyone, different than Metro Rail. They face certain kind of things that will impact their service that Metro Rail doesn't. And that's roadway congestion, very namely. Like Metro Rail is on a closed system with its own tracks. These buses all are on the roads with every other car that is out there today. And as congestion increases, that creates real impacts for the cost of operating the bus service on these high ridership routes. And so again, if congestion on this example route here were to go up by 10 minutes, that would cause the WMATA or other bus operators to have to add another bus. Or said differently, ignoring any increase in cost for drivers or gas, they'd have to pay 20% more because they have to run another bus just to maintain existing service levels. So you're not getting anything new. You're just keeping what you have. And so looking at so that's why bus priority is a big part of the recommendations of this plan. This map here shows you some initial high value corridors that have been identified through the DMV Moves process here. I want to stress the ultimate solution on these corridors will be determined in a partnership through WMATA in the local jurisdictions. It will be different in different places, but we believe that in all of these corridors, there's real long-term benefits and value and cost savings by implementing bus priority investments along those routes. And so, as I mentioned, when you combine bus priority with rail modernization, this addresses the blue, orange, silver core capacity, and it does it for a fraction of the cost of some of the past solutions that we've talked about as a region. So I think, you may be familiar with the BLOOP, or the Blue Line Loop, through kind of downtown DC and back through National Harbor. That was, I think, conservatively $30 to $35 billion. The investments that we're talking about here that will address this, I think, are around 10% to 15% of those costs. So a much more efficient way of addressing core capacity of the Metro Rail system. So this chart shows you what the breakdown of the $460 million would be by jurisdiction. Again, this is using kind of existing funding formulas on the capital side at WMATA there. And so you can kind of see what those amounts are. And again, just really importantly, the funds need to be bondable, have limited restrictions or no restrictions or encumbrances, and then grow over time so we can have that sustainable revolving bond program into the future. I think what's really important to also recognize is we're not the only region who's faced these challenges, and some of our peers have been successful over the last 12 months in taking real steps forward to trying to shore up and address the needs of their transit system. So in Chicago, the Illinois legislature just enacted legislation that both redirects some existing money and raises some sales tax in the Chicago area to shore up the three transit agencies there, CTA, PACE, and Metra, to ensure that they're on a sustainable financial footing. We've also seen efforts in New York City and in the Bay Area. The specifics of how they've done it may or may not be the way we want to approach it, but I think what's important is they faced a similar challenge and they have kind of moved forward. And so I'm hopeful that as a region, we can also do the same in the coming months. As I mentioned, because there is no regional funding solution, we have identified needs for the local transit agencies, but haven't gotten into the specific types of projects there. So on the commuter rail side, we need $60 million a year to maintain existing service levels at MARC and VRE. There's also future opportunities, though, on the commuter rail side that I think are very exciting with the completion of Long Bridge in the future to explore opportunities of run-through service and regional rail. That is going to take additional work and engagement to kind of understand, what that may cost to be able to implement, but it is, I think, a real opportunity for the region. On the local bus side, we did look at the systems again with the kind of mindset of maximizing the existing service. And we had, using regional service design guidelines, we estimate somewhere around $65 to $80 million a year needed to kind of enhance that local bus service. I want to be really clear for anyone in the room, this does not include some of those major expansion projects, like some of the things in the NVTA BRT plan, the Southern Maryland Rapid Transit, or other projects that are very important and worthwhile. But again, sticking within the task force direction to focus on maximizing the existing system is why you kind of see this figure and this type of analysis before you today. With any new funding must come real commitments to accountability and transparency. And so I want to talk a little bit about two of the key things that we are recommending for WMATA to kind of pair with this new funding. So I was, for those of you who are here in 2018, you may know I was pretty heavily involved in that process. And I think one of the most telling things now is when you go back and talk to people, you can get 4 people in a room who were involved in that process and get 5 recollections of what was supposed to happen or when we were supposed to experience X outcome or how long the money was supposed to work. And so what we're asking this time is we have documented all of the assumptions underpinning this financing plan, and we want to ask WMATA to report annually to COG and TPB on whether or not things are progressing as we anticipated. I hope this means that we'll always see a great report and the health check will look, say thumbs up. But there may also be cases where that's not what's happening. And the important thing is that we know that as a region and we know it early and in advance so that we have the opportunity as a region to consider course corrections to ensure we have a healthy WMATA for this region kind of moving forward. The other thing I want to talk about is reforms to the 3% kind of cost containment provision that was a part of 2018. In 2018, that was put in place in Virginia and in Maryland, and it applies to the overall subsidy that those jurisdictions can ask for from WMATA. What we want to ask WMATA to now with this increased funding is to really focus on controlling the cost of the service that they produce. So under that 3% subsidy cap, there is no relationship to the amount of service that you're getting there. It's just saying your subsidy can't go more than 3%. Now, if WMATA receives these additional capital funds, we want to ask them to ensure and commit to this region that the transit service you buy today will not cost more than 3% more the following year. As a region, you can decide whether you want to buy more or less or the same amount of service, but we're asking WMATA to give you the certainty of what that will cost long-term so you can have good financial plans that underpin kind of your forecast and local budgets moving forward. There's a number of other things up there, but those are kind of the two key things I really wanted to highlight on this slide. I think importantly, there's still a lot of work to do even beyond the DMV moves plans and recommendations. And so we need to look at opportunities to use TOD to help improve ridership and other economic development opportunities around these Metro Rail stations and other transit stations in the region. As I mentioned, the fourth component of the plan, and this is the final aspect here, is really looking at opportunities to, with our 14 different transit operators, create a more seamless kind of experience throughout the region. And so I want to give all of the transit agency staff in this region a big thank you for getting engaged in the various work groups that had numbers and numbers of meetings working through all of the issues, talking about how can we improve wayfinding? How can we create a uniform kind of fare structure? And I'm pleased to say we do have action plans, and these are included in the report at a summary level on 6 different areas. Today, I really just want to talk about 2 of those, though. The first is fare policy. Again, we know some systems in this region are fare free. Nothing about what I'm going to say would change that. But if you are charging a fare, on the bus side, we are asking that the way those fares work would be the same across the region. So today, some jurisdictions have a low-income discount program. Some jurisdictions have a different one. Some have none. And so what we're asking is that everybody adopt and implement an identical and uniform low-income discount program. The same thing with students. The rules about students riding free is different in almost every single jurisdiction across the region. And so we're asking folks to just make a rule. If you're a student, you get to ride free, kind of moving forward here. There's other changes related to that, but those are 2 of the key ones under the fare policy kind of action plan. Related to that, though, is we're also asking that we have performance reporting and that across the region, all transit agencies report on their service and how it's working in a uniform way. So as a region, we can kind of understand how transit is working across all of these different jurisdictions. As I mentioned, there's 6 of these. I don't want to go through all of them now, but those are 2 that I wanted to kind of highlight as we move forward here. So what are the benefits of DMV moves? We get a faster, safer, and more reliable and cost-effective rail and bus service. We believe this is going to lead to higher ridership and increased fare revenues. We also think this will expand economic opportunities by creating better and faster access to jobs, shopping, healthcare, and other needs. Just as importantly, though, there are real risks to no action. So we talked earlier about what will happen to the WMATA State of Good Repair backlog without increased and new additional funding here. And that backlog is going to grow, and it's going to grow quickly, and we'll turn back to where we were before 2018, around 2035. And so that will lead, we'll have a significant impact on the quality of service that this region gets, and in turn on the ridership in this region. So there's real risk and opportunities if no action is taken as a result of DMV moves. And so I think with that, I'm now going to pass it back to Chair Lusk and Chair Santos.
Actually, Councilmember.
I
Yep,
apologize.
sorry, Nick. Yeah, we're going to take it from here for questions from the committee. What we've done in the past is, if you have a question, please turn your tent up so we can see it, and I will call them, and Councilmember and I will call them in order as we see them. Okay. Oh, we have one. All right. First, I'll call in Mr. Snyder.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a clarifying question. On the slide on page 13, when you say $65 to $80 million, right, is that coming out of the $460 million, but it's a separate fund?
No, sir, that would be a separate amount that the local decision makers within either DC, Maryland, or Virginia could choose to raise to support the non-WMATA service in their jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you. Another question for you. When you said that you want to develop a plan that in jurisdiction, everybody share the same plan, so you're saying the students ride free. So I think DC and Washington, DC, the students ride free because no school bus. So you're saying in Prince George County, you want us to adopt the policy as well because some of our schools catch the Metro bus getting back and forth to different high schools in Prince George County. You recommend that all students ride free as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. The question. Thank you.
Mr. Mercer.
Yeah, I think Clerk Neville's just looking. I just wanted a little clarification on that last piece. There's a lot of nuance to that. I think what we're trying to say is that WMATA, we currently have a program that we do with jurisdictions to support students riding free. We have a different one in Fairfax, which is different than Montgomery County, which is different than DC. And what we think we should do here is have one unified student program and that is applicable. So a good example, the one in Montgomery, tell me if I got this wrong, it's for students traveling in Montgomery, but not somewhere else in the another jurisdiction. And Fairfax is similar, and so we think if we operate as a region, we should try to have a student program that people could students, regardless of where they live, could use the system and get around. And therefore, all the systems would treat students the same way, same as all seniors the same way. So just trying to create consistency of programs on a regional level, like we did at Metro for our reduced fare program.
Just to put a fine point on it, Mr. Mayor, we're not suggesting that the county get rid of its school buses like they do in the district. That would be a choice. I mean, that is something the district has decided, and they have a contract with Metro that speaks to that. In Alexandria, a lot of the students take Dash to get to school, but this would just be treating 18-year-olds and under the same way. They ride free. What you do with your own school bus and transportation system would remain in place.
Okay, thank you. Chair Randall, followed by Councilmember Wolf, followed by Board Member Karantonis.
Thank you. First, I want to say this is phenomenal work. It really is, especially, I mean, this is the work that will keep us from being back here in 5 years, 10 years, 8 years. And so this is phenomenal work. So let me just say that first. Two questions. One, on slide number 28, you talked a little bit about the importance of TOD, and I could not agree more. If you're going to make the Metro work, TOD. I would say that as we talk about that, and I can just say for Virginia, it really speaks to why it's important for localities to keep our local land use and zoning, and so that we can put the TOD in place that we know needs to be there. So if we ever have to go to Richmond and Annapolis, we're going to take all of the Metro Board with us to have those conversations. Okay. My second question is, for the 3%, Nick is laughing there, for the 3% growth, if tomorrow a miracle happened and a windfall of money came from the federal government that was bondable, sustainable money that goes to Metro, it's a 3%, this 3% growth that we put in here, does that still stand if any other sources of money came into the equation?
So Chair, I think there's 2 points I think relate to the question that you've asked there. So one, we're saying that the new capital funding would need to grow at 3% a year. In the scenario you've laid out, if for some reason there was a new source of federal funds that grew at 3% a year, let's say just for discussion purposes, that was $460 million, like, does that meet the need, I guess is kind of what you're asking. I think the answer is yes. I don't want to comment on whether that scenario will come to pass. But yes, I think that the point is that we need $460 million a year that grows at 3% a year. I think the separate thing on the slide, kind of 27, about the 3% growth in the cost of transit service, to me, that would apply regardless of where the capital funding is coming from, because what we are asking for is WMATA to manage the cost of what it produces, which is transit service. And as a region, again, you get to decide how much you want to buy. And if you buy the same amount every year, you know the next year it's going to cost at most 3% more than it did the year before. And it gives you that certainty long term.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.
Chair Randall, if I can, just one little nuance. So maybe I'll be the nuance guy here. Hopefully not much. What the 460 is really important, though, it's to allow us to go leverage for federal funding. And so a big problem we have that other regions have, they are going after big federal funds that we do not have the match. So the way the federal programs work is you need local match to go get more money. And so that's why Seattle has a lot, LA, Boston, New York, and all over the country. This money will allow us to go get this equivalent money out of the federal government. Without the local match, we cannot get hundreds of millions of dollars back into the system.
That's an incredibly important nuance. Thank you very much.
Yes, it is. My apologies. I should have brought that up.
Okay, Councilmember Wolf, followed by Mr. Karantonis.
Thank you, and I appreciate this is a political process. As in any political process, there is no perfect answer for everyone, as was mentioned earlier. But representing a non-metro jurisdiction and being in the outer suburbs, the ability to bring in the other regional providers becomes a critical component realizing Annapolis is going to deal with things differently than Virginia, but I'm wondering if Delegate Sickles can update us as to the Virginia process, specifically SJ 28, and frankly, the likelihood that we're able to be able to get this through in the whole.
You have to microphone, Mark. Delegate Sickles.
I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to pass substantial legislation. There will be introduced 2 different bills, one smaller and transit-oriented, and it takes care of jurisdictions like yours, and with VRE, intercity rail, and OmniRide. All those things you'll be happy about. There's a bigger bill that does that and raises 800 or 900 million for education and other purposes, be appropriated by the Appropriations Committee. So yes, now we've got to get the votes. I think we had an election the other day. We got a few more votes. So I'm very optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Karatonis, followed by Councilmember Catroni.
Thank you. First of all, absolutely awesome work. I mean, at some point we have to understand. I think there's a cultural shift here. We often considered, from a point of view of local governments, WMATA as a a service provider, kind of a giant contractor, et cetera. Now we see WMATA and we treat WMATA as a partner. We have equal responsibilities to deliver, a critical part of the infrastructure of the DMV. My question is a little bit of follow-up on Chair Randall's question on the 3% cap and how we deal with that. I appreciate the DMV's statement on the 2 drivers of reducing operation costs, which is modernization and bus priority. And I appreciate them a lot. I don't know the econometrics of that, how much of this will happen, but I worry about the timing of that because I know, and Mr. Clark has very often, Randy Clark has very often insisted on that. We are kind of in a hurry to implement these because we need to realize the improvement as soon as possible. Plus, the experience of the last, and I'm a user of the system today. The experience is that it works. People are riding more metro, massively so. So it's not up to us to throttle service here and to decide between subsidy and service. I don't want to be in this situation. I want to provide service to increase demand. So I'm a little bit concerned about the 3% being still a limiting thing. I understand the politics of that. I understand that. I just want to have the flexibility to respond to the demand that may come sooner than the 3% suggests.
So I would say the intent of this suggested modification to the 3% cap is to give you that flexibility. So today, the 3% cap is on the subsidy requests from WMATA to the various jurisdictions. Now, there are different exceptions to that in Virginia and in Maryland. I know the ones in Virginia. I don't know the ones in Maryland. Importantly, though, that this change, it doesn't say Arlington County, or region, you can ask for X amount of service. It says the service that WMATA is producing is going to cost a certain amount or less. And the flexibility exists for the region then to choose the service levels that are right for the region at the WMATA board. And so the intent of these changes is actually to help facilitate, I think, what you're asking for by ensuring kind of the certainty in what the costs are from WMATA.
Right, I understand that.
Okay. I may not understand, I'm sorry.
By the way, yeah, I'm satisfied with the response. By the way, we need to, all of us who have responsibility and we're budgeting also for, own transportation agencies, we need to think very, very clearly about how this balances with our commitments to WMATA in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gratoni. And then I'm going to turn to Mayor Ashton, who's online.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you for this presentation. So, and I'm going to kind of build on what Taka said. I think there is no plan for expansion for rail, right? In any of this in this proposal. Yet there will be a growing. The region is still projected to grow significantly by 2050. Did you look at all about what it might take to expand rail? Knowing that we're keeping it at 460, 3% cap, I heard that. But if we wanted to expand rail, what would that look like? Did you look at that at all?
So I'll start, but I did assume Mr. Clark is going to jump in there. So we did have these discussions at the task force level and at a very kind of high level talked about here's the cost of on a per mile basis of expanding rail. We also talked, for example, about like the Blue Line loop that WMATA had studied through DC. And the very clear feedback we got from the task force was that those costs were outside of what they wanted to look at in DMV moves. But also importantly, we have to address the core capacity issues between Roslyn and Stadium Armory before we think about or try and work on some of those extensions there, because we have to be able to address that issue to be able to have a kind of larger footprint. And with that, I think Mr. Clark will probably add some additional nuance.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. We've also been talking at WMATA, the board and senior staff, about trying to put down like a Metro 2050 and kind of more of an actual vision plan for Metro, which I don't think we've had in a long time. And that could identify where those gaps are. Politically, people have talked about different needs. Quite frankly, part of this is also a regional rail conversation. Sometimes people want Metro to go somewhere. We already have another regional partner, and that regional partner is working on their long-term build of all day a week frequency, which means you wouldn't put a Metro line next to, obviously, another rail line. So I think there's this larger regional concept, but for us, we got to get this base right, and we need to make sure the existing system is performing at a high level. And then we can start thinking about where there's other gaps. We could also have a larger conversation about the type of rail as well. I think our region may be overly fixated thinking that it all has to look the same as Metro Rail. And the reality is most large operators of the world operate different types of services. So we could operate, say, light Metro, which is smaller trains and smaller platforms. We could operate light rail, which is kind of standard. So, I think we got to be willing to understand that the paradigm we've created is very much like Metro is X, where reality, that's not how the world of public transportation is. So we need to be open to any and all types of mobility as our world changes over time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Real quick, the two types of expansion that was discussed for the task force and the working group. One is on the bus line. We see the number of bus riders exceeding pre-pandemic levels. And there was a robust conversation about these corridors. So buses leaving Loudoun County and ended up in DC and making sure that a Loudoun County resident doesn't sit in traffic for an hour in an adjoining jurisdiction. And how do we work on treating those roads and thinking about those corridors? When you look at that hub and spoke model, we got a lot of folks traveling on bus between the spokes now, maybe not coming into the hub. So bus was a heavy part of expansion. That's part of the corridor discussion there. And Mr. Clark just referenced it. We focused on passenger rail, MARC, and VRE. And when you look at competitor metro areas in the country, and you look at metro areas that are much smaller, there's a lot of room for growth on VRE and MARC. And they've got great plans to expand, but when we get letters in the inbox advocating for Metro to expand down 95 into adjoining counties where there is a heavy VRE footprint already, and there are billions and billions of dollars being spent to build a new Long Bridge and go to 3 tracks and increase the number of trains that can run 4 tracks. We've got them right now in Annapolis and Richmond. If there are not plans on talking about how to run MARC into Virginia and how to run VRE into MARC, it will be one of the biggest missed opportunities for this region. The money is there, the work is being done, and that programming needs to be occurring now. So I think bus and passenger rail were a big part of the conversation in terms of expansion.
Thank you. We're going to go to Mayor Ashton, who's online, followed by Chair Elrich, followed by Chair Santos. Mayor Ashton, are you there?
I am. Thank you. I just want to thank you for this presentation, talking about how transit is critical for our economy and equity and for getting around. I appreciate the conversation. Some of the questions I was thinking of were already asked. I do want to understand our vision for the future in terms of expanding access. I know that I appreciate what you shared in terms of the backlog that is needed to be addressed, as well as the need for regional coordination. I was just curious as the ask that you have by jurisdiction, the amounts that you include, how does that correlate to where the service is? I believe when I looked at a presentation from last year, 40 stations in DC, 26 in Maryland, 32 in Virginia, doesn't count the bus part. But how are you relating what is the share of each jurisdiction so that we can make sure we're equitably taking care of what we need to, and not only just filling the backlog, but just how do we envision expanding service for the future? So I won't ask you to go into the vision part because you just answered that, but at least in terms of how we're thinking about how we all need to be contributing to make this successful for the future.
Yeah, so the figures on slide 23 here that show the 460 by each jurisdiction, those are proportional distributions of that 460 using the existing WMATA capital formulas for both rail and bus. And so there's a number of things on like the Metro Rail side, for example, that go into the cost there. It's not just the stations, there's also the track. There's the number of trains that it takes to kind of serve a given kind of footprint, if you will. And so WMATA just spent, I believe, about 12 months, perhaps longer, updating all of their kind of operating and capital formulas there. And so a lot of work has gone into that. And so this funding here is showing kind of what the breakdown is using existing WMATA formulas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Chair Elrich, followed by Chair Santos, followed by Delegate Sickles.
So 2 quick questions. First, I was intrigued by the comments about using this money for federal matches. So my question then is, are federal matches assumed in your budget? Or is this, if we get a federal match, is that 460 million or whatever it is, that's not assumed in budgets?
Nick, I'll answer this one. So thank you for the question, County Executive. So next month, the way the process works at Metro, the general manager releases a proposed budget to the board. That will happen next month. We will have 2 proposed, and we have a board meeting this Thursday, which we'll be talking about budget again. We basically never stop talking about budget at Metro board meetings. So current, future, past. But we've already highlighted a couple aspects of the upcoming budget cycle. So there'll be a proposed operating budget, and then our 6-year CIP. We're going to show 2 CIPs this year for the board's consideration. Board usually votes by April. Could be March, but generally by April. And we are going to show one with this funding, and we're going to show one without that funding. And without that funding, it's going to show, as Nick highlighted, a very big drop in our capital program, which means everything across the board that we do will have major cuts to it, from rail renewal to buying buses to elevator escalator to, could be our new 8,000 series trains. All these types of things could be impacted. If we have the money, where are the things we are investing in, which is kind of the highlights of this whole activity, which is modernization and bus frequency. And on the rail one specifically, there's a program called, FTA has a program called Capital Investment Grant Program. And there's a program within that called Core Capacity. And that is the program that we would want to go after. And we'd start with the red line, and we highlight this before. The red line is where we start everything. 1, it's our oldest line, and 2, there's no what we call interlining, so it's independent of the other lines. And that is the initial investment that we'll be going after.
But if you don't get a subsidy from the feds, this doesn't trigger what you said you're going to try to get. Does that mean that that project that you just mentioned would never come to fruition because you're dependent on the feds for that new piece?
Yeah, I would say it will make all of these programs much more challenging, and I wouldn't predetermine what the board would decide years in the future. It could be that we're going to have to replace our signaling system. There's no getting around it. So if DMV Moves doesn't pass and the federal government doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. This is whether I'm here, everyone in this room is gone. We are replacing our signaling system at some point. That's not a debatable thing. It's like, it's going to happen. The question is, how long is it going to take, and how much pain are we going to purposely put ourselves in, and how proactive we are versus how reactive. That is the decision that we're making. So
I guess I was trying to understand whether the federal money was additive to what we're doing or whether
it'll be all.
it's assumed in what we're doing.
We will not assume any discretionary grants on the federal side. So our models assume the formula money, which is allocated by the federal government, but it doesn't assume any discretionary money. With this funding or with other funding that we already have, we go after federal opportunities, and hopefully we'll receive some of those over time.
Okay. My other question was, I just feel like given what we're living in right now, not this room in this meeting and what we're talking about, but the consequences of the federal government, have you all made any assumptions about what happens if there is riffing of large parts of the federal government or agencies are moved out of the area? Have you done any sort of like scenarios about what the implications are for ridership and fares?
We do modeling all the time on different ridership. I'm not sure how pertinent it is to this particular conversation, but we can happen to work with you on the side if you. But a good example with the federal government shutdown, ridership still grew for us year over year, which is a very good sign for the robustness of our network that all days a week and all hours of the day continue to grow. We clearly want to be there to support our federal government workforce, though.
Thank you. Chair Santos, followed by Delegate Sickles, followed by Mayor Gaskins.
Thank you. The county executive actually took my question, but I'm going to build on it to make this similar point, which is just, I'm thinking, Randy, this probably is for you, which is, can you clarify what happens if matching federal grants don't materialize? Does that mean the anticipation is coming back to this group for additional money?
Well, ultimately, we'll come back to the GM at the time to propose budgets to the board to then prioritize the funding that is available on the programs in the asset kind of program, right? So we need federal, we currently rely on federal money like every other transit system in our formula program. We go after discretionary programs. A good example for that would be zero or low emission bus program or bus and bus facilities, of which we won a big award in partnership with Fairfax on a couple of years ago. So there are opportunities like that. The capital investment grant program is going to be critical to actually getting our modernization program done. In theory, we could do it without the federal government, but it might be decades and decades longer, or it's going to mean tons of other things don't get funded. So, you know, we're going to be in this catch-22 here with or without this money, which is right now our elevators and escalators are back into pretty good shape, and we have a pretty good rail fleet with our 8000 series paid for, or budgeted for. But our signaling system is behind almost every other large agency in the country and getting worse. So we could have really nice trains that can't move because of our signaling system. Conversely, we work on our signaling, and we're going to have elevators and escalators in 15 years start breaking down because we don't have money for that. At the end of the day, it's about balancing priorities. We are just in a much better shape to go after federal opportunities if we have local match. So I think that's, if there's one thing I think that I would really encourage people is, we right now are lacking the opportunity to go get money that all of our regions around the country are getting. And this money will allow us to leverage that to get just magnitudes of money put back into the metro region. And that alone is a really positive thing.
And relatedly, this is my last, which is, now we've all been reading the news. I know my colleagues from Maryland have been raising the alarm at our board meetings repeatedly about just concern for the ability to, for Maryland to continue to fund at the levels that we all agree are necessary for Metro. And colleagues in DC, because I represent the district, or I'm appointed by the district to the Board of Metro, have also been indicating such. How much flexibility is there? And again, this probably is for Randy, in the target number, if for whatever reason occurs that the funding is not able to be generated at the levels that is recommended?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, one, I think I want to highlight that the funding we say is necessary is the start of fiscal year 28. So what we really are hoping is we get legislation done in 26, because it takes all three parties to then have, because everyone has different fiscal years, so that could kick in our fiscal year July 1st for 28. Excuse me. So the number itself has also come down very significantly. So we started off with a very, very large number, like 750, I think, Tom, right? 750 million. And I will say a lot of really good work, yeah, internally, but a lot of high pressure. So, Brian Hill and his team on the county executives and the county administrative officers really, and I know CFO Glenn Lee's in the room, asked a ton of questions and really went through this pretty forensically. And I would say maybe most transparent thing this region probably has gone through, maybe ever, is the funding related to this. So then we got it down to about 500 million, and now we got it down to 460. We're going to keep looking at where we could save money, right, and where we could execute more efficiently. But there will be a point here where it's just a trade-off of what we're spending it on. So, like everything, it's a prioritization. So if this region said, hey, the most we could do is 300 million, Metro's certainly going to go, great, thank you for 300 million. But it's going to further weaken the efforts that all the speakers said this doesn't even go far enough. And most of the comments so far are about expansion. And so if we just want to run this system well and not go backwards, this is pretty close to the bare minimum that we really need. And most of this would have been really resolved if we had have indexed the funding back in 2018, 2019, because we've really lost mostly its purchasing power and the inflationary aspects that we've gone through. A good example, we have some power equipment that is 60% more expensive than it was 5 years ago. We're always going to have to buy that power equipment no matter what, or we're not running trains and certainly not going to electrify our bus system. So some of this is just, it's beyond our control. It's the economics of a big place. But we've identified about $500 million of savings over the last 2 years. We will keep doing that. So I think it's a very valid question, and it's not, and I hope no one's taken away that there's not a pure number. This is a modeling exercise for our asset renewal to say, how do we get to a bondable program that is revolving? 200 million probably wouldn't get us to a revolving program. Probably 300 or 350 wouldn't do that either. We're probably in the range of around 460 to get us to that secure revolving bond program. So as Chair Phyllis Randall said, we're not back here in 5 or 10 years because we have that certainty, and the jurisdictions do as well.
All right, Delegate Sickles, followed by Mayor Gaskins.
Oh, I think you're first.
Okay. You were first, Mark. Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to put a little bit more meat on the bones of what I said earlier. I am optimistic. I want everybody to remember this is a legislative process. Every time you go into a legislative session, people think about what might happen. You introduce bills, bills change. What we're trying to do here is to raise dedicated sources of funding that in some cases will supplant general fund sources that are being used now for transit purposes. Why are we going to do that? Because we have a lot of pressure on our real estate property taxes that needs to be relieved. This is one way through a dedicated revenue source that we can fund things without relying, or more so, without relying on general funds. So that's one. Number two is we need to separate our operations and our ridership and our annual support from the capital plan. From the so we in Virginia we need to raise 136 in for capital of the 460. Okay, we're not good. I know that got Phil happy over there. There's so many numbers, but our number for operations is 153. We're going to raise that separately from our number for capital, which is 136. So those are Virginia numbers. We got to figure out how to do that. We're going to try to do it with dedicated sources of revenue so the local government can get some property tax relief in doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Mayor Gaskins, followed by Board Member Fitzwater, followed by Dr. Lowe.
First, thank you for the presentation and all of the work that has gone into this. I'm curious about some of the concepts and ideas around measuring system performance and accountability. And so the two questions I had were, one, can you provide examples of what some of those performance measures might look like? For example, if the goal is access to opportunity, like how are we making sure that we're achieving that through this plan? And then the second, can you just speak to how frequently the overall capital plan is revisited and updated, and like what that looks like over the life of this plan?
So I'll start with your second question first, because that's a shorter, kind of quicker answer. So as a part of the 2018 WMATA funding, they are required to have a 6-year capital improvement program that they update annually. And so we always, every year, have a 6-year kind of capital program that shows exact line item expenditures over time. What we're recommending as a part of this proposal is that in addition to that, every 5 years, WMATA develop a 20-year capital plan, which then goes beyond that 6-year window to give you all as local decision makers some sense of what the needs are into the future and the categories where those expenditures will happen. Again, it's a plan. You never get to year 7 of the plan because it'll be updated every 5 years. So again, it's kind of a document to help you all understand where WMATA thinks its needs are and how it wants to try and allocate the funding it's going to have available. On the performance reporting, it's a little different than I think what you were getting at there, Mayor. So it is more saying, if this bus route is intended to do X, is it doing that? Like, if we think it's going to, it's a high ridership route, are we achieving high ridership? If not, what are some of the issues that might be impacting that? Is it congestion? Is it maybe that the route itself needs some modification in terms of where it starts and stops or where it picks up and drops off people? So it's kind of this concept of looking at our bus system, make it clear as to what we hope to get out of various routes, understanding if they're achieving it, and if they're not, helping to identify maybe why they're falling short, which I think oftentimes, like some of your agencies, to be very direct, we're like, well, that's just going to say our routes are bad, and then people are going to regret them. It's like, no. What we want to do is, why isn't that route delivering on what we think it's supposed to do? And then how do we make changes to make it a higher performing route in the future?
Okay, so the annual report that's on number 27, that's only related to the bus priority?
So I apologize. That report is all about WMATA, the assumptions and other things that we talked about earlier. And so that would get into underpinning the assumptions for DMV moves. WMATA has projected a 2% growth in ridership kind of on an annual basis. And so what that report would do is track, are we seeing that sort of growth? If we're not, then we need to start as a region saying, okay, that's not happening. What are the implications of that for the kind of capital funding plan WMATA has? Similarly, it says, if you get a federal grant, what are the implications of that and other things? And that would be the report that tracks all the things we've assumed in DMV moves and whether or not we're getting them or we're at risk of them not kind of happening successfully. So is WMATA delivering its capital budget? Are they able to spend the amount that they said they were, which again, they're doing a very good job of that now. If you go back 10 years ago or a little bit further, that was a problem kind of at that time. So tracking a lot of those types of factors so we can understand if WMATA is kind of in a healthy place, in a good place or slightly off track. And again, if it's off track, it would be my hope that the region would then have a discussion about why is that happening and what do we need to do to correct that before it becomes a big problem.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Okay, thank you. Apologies earlier, County Executive Fitzwater, followed by Board Member Lowe, followed by Board Member Elkhorn.
Hello, Jessica Fitzwater, County Executive in Frederick County, Maryland. So I'm trying to figure out how to ask this, but I guess this is more of a higher level question, but it's going to go back to the slide 23, which has the dollar amounts on it. So that's an important one. Chair Santos already mentioned just that some of the members of the task force from Maryland have raised some concerns. We have a state budget deficit predicted to be 1.4 billion in this fiscal year and over 3 billion in FY28. All of as you all know, local jurisdictions don't have taxing authority for anything having to do with transportation in Maryland. And so, I mean, the larger question is just, what is the path, I guess? And I guess the kind of tangential question to that is, I'm having a little bit of a chicken or eggs first kind of process with this, is this plan meant to be the advocacy document so that we can actually make the case to get this funding from the 3 jurisdictions? Or because and I guess if that's the case, there isn't like an advocacy plan attached to this. So then it's kind of like, okay, so who is doing the advocating? Who are we advocating to? Who's championing this? Like, where are the governors on this? Who are our lead sponsors on anything? I mean, this is massive. And I think that's a little bit where my head is right now, is so much time and effort went into this. And again, it's aspirational in a sense, but it's not expansion. I mean, as you've already said, Mr. Clark, multiple times, this is to maintain basically existing levels of service and to bring efficiencies and effectiveness to existing service. So I'm kind of just curious, I guess, about what conversations have already happened about an actual path, so that folks who are supporting this, it's not just going to look pretty, but it's actually possible. And I'm a little unclear about that. More than a little, actually, just to be frank.
So I'll
Sorry,
start.
I had to ask the hard question. I just had to, because it's like the elephant, and it feels like the elephant in the room right now, and I need a little clarity.
So County Executive Fitzwater, to me, I view this plan as now all the decision makers, both at the local and state level, have a document that has been reviewed, vetted, and gives them a clear sense and a roadmap of what is necessary to have a successful WMATA system in this region. I think a lot of the questions that you've asked about, like who is the bill sponsor, what are the path forward, and all those things, are the discussions that I think have already started in some cases, but also will accelerate after today. What didn't exist before this initiative was any clear understanding of what was the need, why was that the need, and what would the impacts be if we did not meet that need. And so this document is supposed to provide that information, and the process was supposed to kind of vet the kind of information provided by WMATA, ask the hard questions, and then come up with something that we as a region felt comfortable in saying, this is a realistic need. A lot of the other conversations or questions that you asked, excuse me, I think are conversations that have started and will continue in the coming months.
And Nick, it was a great question. This is not in and of itself an advocacy document. The folks around this table have to prioritize that this is something worth fighting for, and that hopefully will come out of today's meeting. In terms of, let's talk about the granular recommendations for fares for kids riding free, or free transfers, or how do we design bus stops, right? This process has occurred in this region for 30 years, where reports have been made advocating these recommendations. None of the recommendations on the coordinating side are new. They have been made in this region for 30 years. What has happened is we've gotten to this point, a broad recommendation is made, and then everyone dissolves and we go back to our corners and do our day jobs. This report says, okay, if students ride free, what does that mean for Fairfax County? Do they need to pass something at the county level? What does that mean for the General Assembly in Maryland? Do they need to pass something at the General Assembly member to effectuate recommendation X, Y, or Z? And it will lay out kind of who is responsible. What does the Transportation Planning Board or COG need to do? What does WMATA need to do if we're redesigning all the bus flags to be uniform? And then asking TPB to consider a feedback loop every 6 months or every year where we assess those recommendations and hold folks like myself or Randy accountable to execute them. On the funding side, no question. I mean, with my old hat on in Virginia, I expect my secretaries and local electeds to advocate for the things that they were hired to advocate for and what matters to them. And it is a prioritization game in Annapolis and in Richmond. The COG footprint that we represent is half of Maryland's economy, and the footprint that we represent in Northern Virginia is half of Virginia's economy. Chicago is part of Illinois. They are also facing budget cuts and just passed a $1.5 billion annual funding plan for their transit system. So it's a matter of rank order priority, and at least my observation is you don't get things considered unless you have consensus as a region and then go advocate, and we see what happens. But certainly working with the local electeds and your delegates and senators and folks around the table that represent their executives at the statewide level to figure out how we can get something. It would happen this year, might happen next year. I mean, there are plenty of multi-year plays at the legislative lever to get things over the line.
Okay, Board Member Lowe, Dr. Lowe, followed by Board Member Elkhorn, followed by Councilmember Snyder.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so, in the tough budget times, I think it's, we're here today talking about a capital investment, but I think it's important to remember that WMATA's operating needs are also paid for by the same funding partners that are going to be involved in this conversation today. And I think it's really huge that for the first time we have a vision that is a capital investment that actually bends the cost curve on operating. Right? This is actually, it actually speaks to, you know, what everyone involved in making a budget at the local or state level is going to need to be involved in, not just this year, but every year forever. We had up previously the slide that showed the risk of no action. And it says on there, you know, there are risks to like safety and reliability, right, if we don't do this. What is not literally bulleted there, but is implied by that statement, is increased costs of operations. We can say that we want to be 3% all we want, but reality and signals are going to do what they're going to do, no matter what we say. And for example, like cutting off Metro's access to low-cost debt, that is a cost because Metro has to get capital from somewhere. So, you know, we can pay for it. We can get the most bang for our buck, you know, and be proactive, or we can be reactive and just keep digging ourselves deeper in the hole. You know, I have the mic right now, so I think we all know metaphor is coming. So like the heat is out of my house right now. And you could say, no problem. Turn on the oven and just open the door. But is that really how to heat my house, right? Like this isn't just about like, that sounds kind of dangerous, right? What's that going to do to my gas bill, right? It's just not a good idea, right? Ultimately, do I want to do it? No. In fact, I had this conversation with my husband last night. Am I going to do it? Yes. I have to fix the heat at the house. So we're going to do it. I think, you know, the one thing that isn't captured, there's no optimism in what I just said. It didn't sound very fun. So I think, you know, the other thing I want to highlight is that this is not just about state of good repair. Like I just made it sound like it just was. And actually my question to the staff would be like, we just had this big rebaselining conversation around operations. How similar is this 460 number to like what rebaselining would be in the capital context? Not that I have an expectation that it would be, because I think the other thing to highlight is that this includes so much modernization that it is a chance to create a symbolic rebrand of our whole region around adoption of technology and the future that is, you know, I would say like I don't love like the Chicago analogy, for example, because first the gap that we have to close is less, and what we will get for closing it is so much more.
Thank you, Tracy. Board Member Alcorn and David, if I could, we have Board Member Bailey online who has had her hand raised, so I'm going to go to her before I come to you. Thank you. Walter.
Yeah, thank you. Just very quickly, a couple of things. First of all, you know, I think we in all of our jurisdictions, we have our own issues and our own challenges. And I want to thank Delegate Sickles in particular for his leadership and what he's doing coming out of the SJ28 process. And thank you very much for that. We do have, and this is something that's maybe a little Virginia specific, but with rebaselining that Director Lowe just mentioned, in Virginia, we had to take extraordinary measures, both at the state level and at the local level to cover that. So frankly, we're trying to use this process to make up for that. And we also have some overdependence on our property taxes at the local level in Virginia. And maybe this can help a little with that. But as we move forward, I think it is going to depend on all of us to be advocates. Mark, you're going to be seeing a lot of me in Richmond this next January, February, in a good way. And absolutely. But I think it's also, this has come up a couple of times about the lack of expansion in this process. But one of the things that we did in the SJ28 process is we did include a little bit of money, teeny little bit of money set aside for studies, for design, basically to prepare and to understand what we need to do and where expansion makes sense and how to do it. So having that built into a funding solution is something I highly recommend because I know in my role on the Board of Supervisors, I represent one of the faster growing parts of Northern Virginia. And, frankly, we absolutely need more transit, going into the future. So that's our way of addressing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Bailey, followed by City Council Member Schneider, followed by County Board Member Stewart. Ms. Bailey, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And I do remember the rotary phones, but that's not dating me. I probably dreamed about it. But at any rate, the reason why I wanted to speak, I agree with my my dear friend Phyllis Randall. This is phenomenal. And it is, Clark, to what you had said, something that's really 30 years, maybe older than that. My question is, as we talk about and not necessarily reminisce about the rotary phones, as we grow in this transportation endeavor, do we have something in place documented that says, how do we, how do I say this? How do we plan, if we can, Randy, in advance for us not going back in the recesses of the rotary phone era, and we're thinking ahead when we're talking about replacing old stuff and planning for new stuff, if that makes sense.
Chair Bailey, this is Nick Donahue. I think that makes complete sense, and I think that is part of what is actually baked into the proposal here for this signal replacement is while we're going in and doing all of this work that has to be done to replace these signals, we could replace it in theory with essentially the newer type of signal and do no other enhancements. And what we're trying to do now is saying, if we're in there, let's put in the most modern type of signaling and get the most out of it that we can. And so the investments that we're talking about here would allow WMATA to run kind of end-to-end service. For example, on the Red Line, I think it's something like 10 or to 15 minutes faster than they do today. They could run it with the existing service with less trains, which said in a different way means with the same operating budget, you could run more service. The customers will save minutes on trips. I used to review a lot of like environmental documents for highway projects. I want to tell you, I would have killed to be able to say, we're going to save you 5 or 6 minutes on this single trip, because that type of travel time savings is really hard to come by. And I want to give the WMATA team credit, like the signaling modernization that they're talking about here provides that, for customers there. And that also, again, reduces fleet and has other kind of benefits. Mr. Clark, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, all that's really important. And I really appreciate the question. Kind of two elements. One, everywhere in the world is further ahead of us than United States Transit on the modernizing front by far. Europe, Asia, Honolulu's the first one. Montreal just last week opened a new 30-kilometer ring, fully automated metro that's going to serve, I think, 300,000 people on that line that connects the entire city together. Toronto is spending, I think, $75 billion on a transit expansion right now. Seattle has, I think, a $65, $70 billion expansion. This is the way the world is moving. We're only going to kind of more urbanize, as Board Member Alcorn mentioned, and we got to connect people to these opportunities. Also, the rest of the transportation world is moving very quickly. There is no future where we don't have automated vehicles on our streets. So we are going to be left with either Metro is operating from a 1980s, 70s kind of profile with autonomous Waymo fleets all over the place, or not, right? That's the world that we're moving in quickly, an AI, high-tech kind of world.
Yes.
The benefit on the modernization thing I just want to mention is safety. So Nick just mentioned the cost efficiency, critical important. The capacity, the reliability, The safety thing is what probably drives us the most here at Metro. We all have said that safety is the number one thing that we care about, right? And there was lots of big challenges at this organization. The WMSC was set up to do safety oversight. We have a problem with trespassers on our railroads. We have almost at a daily basis someone illegally getting onto our tracks. We have tragic situations, including just about a week ago, someone put themselves in harm in front of a train and had a fatality. This is the reality of running transit, and it is 100% engineered proof that we could reduce that to virtually zero. And that is what's happened all over the world. So I just want to remind everyone, this modernization aspect is also an incredible safety benefit that we need to be investing in to make sure that lives are not lost, and the impact of our employees that don't have to go through that trauma as well. It's a pretty big component.
So if I may just quickly, I would be there to do this personally, but I'm coming down with a cold. I don't want to spread my germs, but I wanted to just thank the board, the task force, that all the efforts that you've done to bring us to this point. It's long overdue, so just thank you. Thank you very much. I yield my time.
Thank you, Supervisor. Councilmember Schneider, followed by County Board Member Stewart, and I think that's going to be our Chair, Co-Chair Allen and I are a little mindful of time. Joe, can you get something in quick? Or all right, we'll end with Mr. McAndrew, and then because we do want to have time, there are some hard. Yeah, I know David's next, but we do have some hard stops for folks, and we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak on the resolution or make suggestions on that, if they have any. So David, thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, Mary Beth Conley and I represent probably the smallest Metro compact jurisdiction, and both of us rode Metro to get here. I rode Metro twice this morning, and I can tell you we have re-achieved our status as a world-class transit system, and frankly, I don't want to lose that as a rider. That would be point number one. Point number two, as chair of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, if it hasn't already been discussed, we unanimously endorsed the DMV Moves resolution as it was worded at that time and substantially as it is now, as well as SJ 28. And that represents a significant number of Northern Virginia jurisdictions who have already said, we endorse this and we're committed to moving forward on it. Just a couple other points. In my view, there's no way that we meet our greenhouse gas objectives in this region without a world-class metro system. There is no way that we can reduce congestion on our highways without a world-class transit system. Finally, in my view, the people have called upon us to show leadership, and this DMV Moves is the absolute epitome of leadership. Let's get on with it and approve it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Board Member Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to County Executive Fitzwater because she voiced kind of my own personal struggle being on the DMV Moves task force these last 18 months from a jurisdiction that we don't actually raise the money or dedicate money to WMATA, but work with our state partners. But it was important to me to be part of this effort because of what we just talked about, Randy, the safety, the reliability for our residents who in Montgomery County depend a great deal on Metro. Metro viability, WMATA's viability is also linked to our economic development in Montgomery County. And we need to make sure that we have stable, reliable funding into the future. But that is a struggle I've had being on this board the last 18 months. And while I don't agree with everything that is in this plan, I just want to say thank you to the changes that were made and reflect the comments that Montgomery County was able to put forward. We really appreciate all of that work. And thank you, Nick, for working over the weekend. I know everyone else who did. But for me, the importance of this moving forward is twofold. One is that this does provide us the tools and the information to do that advocacy. I can tell you, having done this for a number of years and talking to our partners in Annapolis, it was always like, how do we vocalize the need and what we're talking about, rather than just saying the broad statements, we need money for Metro, because that wasn't enough. Because during these tough times and the very tough budget that Maryland is facing right now, we need specifics. And we have them here. And second, on slide 27, we have commitment to a process. And our two boards coming together today, COG and WMATA, committing to that process and that checking in is really important, and I think is a difference from what has happened before. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone who's done this work, and it's going to continue. I think some of the hardest parts are in front of us, so thank you.
That is true. Deputy Secretary McAndrew.
I'll be very quick and just say kudos to the region again. You guys have been tremendous coming together. Not many regions have this type of leadership come to the table to have this type of discussion on a regular basis over many, many months. And I think regardless of the end result of where we land, I think having this type of conversation nets out something positive to come from it. And I'm confident we'll get something. I think to echo some of my colleagues in the state of Maryland, I'd say we as a state greatly value and benefit from our investment within WMATA, as do our colleagues in the other jurisdictions. That's why we're here. That's why we've invested in this system so greatly over the last couple of years. We in 2018 allocated our funding at the expense of other investments. We didn't increase revenues to pay for it. Just most recently, a couple of years ago, we stepped out first and said we are there to make sure our operations are there so that folks can rely on the service that they need to be able to get to where they go. We did that at the expense of the rest of the system. We cannot do that again. And I think that that's the real big challenge. It would be extremely hard to take the $153 million and put it at the expense of other investments, right? We say in here that we want to make sure that we're investing in MARC. We do want to invest in MARC, but if we don't allocate adequate resources and net new revenue, we're going to be at a disadvantage to being able to pay and grow that system to maintain our roads, to address the American Legion Bridge, or take on other key investments that we know that we need to be taking, and we know that many of our colleagues in other jurisdictions care about as well. I think I appreciate that the resolution is non-binding. I appreciate that the resolution calls for net new revenue. Appreciate Delegate Sickles' leadership and taking this one on the nose for us and leading us out the gate. But I think in the state of Maryland, we now have kind of a marching order to have more thorough dialogue about how and when we can address the important question, not just for WMATA, but our other investment needs. We need to prioritize those investment needs and balance those investment needs to make sure we've got a system that serves everybody. So thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Chair Luss, Chair Santos, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the comments and the conversation that we've just had and the questions and responses. I think they were exceptional. I'll just make one point that I appreciate from Clark, Mr. Randy Clark, and that is this idea about the necessary improvements for the signals. You brought me and a number of my colleagues here to see that signal operation, and I got to tell you, it was eye-opening to see how old that system is and that's still in place. It's working, not to scare anybody here, it's working, but recognizing that we do need to make some changes, and that's necessary and important. And then last, I'll say on the bus prioritization, I just appreciate that we're thinking about those who don't ride Metro Rail and trying to figure out how we can provide better service for them that's more reliable, more efficient, and that's more predictable. And I think that is important for the residents here in this region. So let me now move to the most important order of business, I think, here is the consideration of the joint resolution. And we will now consider the joint resolution that's before us. I think many of you have had a chance to look at it, so I will ask for a motion and a second from our COG members first, but then Chair Santos will do the same for the Metro Board. And then after that, both boards will have their resolutions on the floor. We will invite discussion on the resolution. So with that, for the COG board, I would move to approve the joint resolution and ask, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
You got a lot of them.
We have multiple seconds. Since the vice chair is sitting beside me, I'm going to acknowledge his second. He's closest to me, but I think the others for their second as well. So thank you.
And for the WMATA board members, I think 6 of us are here today, if I'm not mistaken. I move approval of the joint board resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Smedberg. Now we can consider and discuss the resolution on the floor, and Chair Lusk and I will facilitate.
Sure.
Any questions, comments specifically on the resolution, friendly amendments, et cetera?
Okay, looks like Mr. Mendelson has his card tent up, so we will recognize him at this time.
Push the button. Push the button.
Let's just
wasn't working.
I have a witness. I thought I would save my comments for when we had the resolution on the floor. Those of you who were at the DMV Moves meeting a couple weeks ago, I spoke raising some concerns and I abstained at that time, and I plan to do that again. One of the issues that I had brought up at DMV Moves was the fact that I felt that the allocation between the 3 jurisdictions, meaning Maryland, Virginia, and the district, was inequitable. The district would be paying $173 million, Maryland would be paying $21 million less, $152 million, and Virginia would be paying $37 million less, that's $136 million. Now, I realize that every jurisdiction is struggling for money, but when you look at the total, the total assets that are available to each jurisdiction, the district is the weakest. Not a good term, but I'll use that term. We have a budget for this year of $22 million. It's roughly a third of Maryland's and roughly a fourth of Virginia's. But we would be paying considerably more with this plan. So that was the concern I raised at DMV Moves. I will note, and I think I might have said this then, that the district has already committed to supporting additional capital investment of the type that's being talked about here: reliable, predictable, bondable, grows at 3%, no restrictions or encumbrances. We have in our budget, in our financial plan, a 1% sales tax increase in the District of Columbia. I think most citizens don't realize this, but we've already voted to approve a 1% sales tax increase beginning in fiscal year 2027. So that demonstrates our commitment to what is at issue here. But it is projected to raise about $135 to $140 million a year. That's a bit short of the $173 million. And the fact is, and this is our own internal challenge, is that we adopt, I think unlike the states, we adopt a 4-year financial plan that has to be balanced. And so we show in the financial plan the sales tax increase, and we have actually spent it on other issues, although it is intended to be rededicated to WMATA and this cause. But that means that we have to, not only is $135 or $140 million less than the $173 million that's on that table, but in fact, we're going to have to cut some spending in our financial plan in order to be able to dedicate, as we intend, that $173 million. I've thought long and hard about this. I feel that if I were to vote no on the resolution, that would be misconstrued as not supporting this regional effort. And the fact that I completely agree, and I think I can speak for the Council of the District of Columbia, I won't speak for the executive, but I think they have a similar view, that we support our public transit system, we support WMATA. I would say, actually, Mr. McAndrew, I think the district is usually first in terms of its support. But it's a real challenge. I just can't, I can't say yes with regard to a $173 million commitment. Recognize this is non-binding, but nonetheless, it is a vote, and I can't say yes to $173 million when we don't got it. So I will be abstaining on this.
Okay, thank you. I will now recognize Chair Randall.
So I will be very quick. I do remember my good friend, Councilman Mendelson, saying this at the DMV Moves meeting. And I just want to say this for the record, not disagreeing with anything Mr. Mendelson just said, but for the record, I want to say that it is not correct to us to say that what comes out of Virginia's budget, because the way Metro is funded in Virginia is by Metro jurisdictions, which is 4 counties and the cities. And so we can't look at the Virginia budget when we have this discussion about, and of course, the city of Alexandria, when we have this discussion. So just for the record, I want to put on the record that Virginia is funded differently. And so quoting the Virginia's budget is not completely correct, I say to my good friend Phil, but I understand what you're saying, but I just want that for the record.
Thank you, Chair Randall. Just for clarification here, I just wanted to make sure if there were any additional changes. We heard, at least from Montgomery County, that there were a number of changes that they got placed in. I want to make sure, are there any other changes that are proposed here at this point?
Well, I do have one, but before I do that, I was going to say it might be helpful. I know these were emailed out to members, I think, over the weekend. I don't know when.
Everyone has hard
Oh, okay. Okay, so, all right. Just making sure that people, all right.
Okay, I'll recognize Mr. Donahue, please.
Good afternoon. First, I want to recognize all the work that went into this incredible, extensive research. I also want to thank everyone that was involved in producing it. I spent the better part of the past 18 months, as many folks here, in developing it. And I do think it provides a clear view of the resources required to maintain a safe, reliable metro system. My vote, which will be to abstain, actually reflects the fact that the executive is formulating the budget right now, and I don't want to get ahead of it, but it will certainly be informed by the insights and findings and observations contained within this report. I want to thank the folks who worked on it for everything you've done.
Any additional questions, comments? Okay.
Which is, I just wanted to propose a friendly amendment. It's very minor, but it's to underscore this point, which has already been made, about how the resolution is non-binding and will, of course, it's much more of a document that's going to be converted into an advocacy tool to the respective legislative bodies and elected officials. So the minor friendly amendment is really just to make that point, which is, I believe, under the, what is the second resolved? There is basically, it's saying that our boards, respective boards, are adopting this plan. So I'm saying adopting the DMV Moves plan within approved WMATA and other budgets. So it's more just, again, reiterating the point that this is non-binding, symbolic from the resolution. Oh, sorry.
Page 3, number.
Where am I
Number
looking
2.
at this?
Number 2.
Yes, yeah, under
Yes.
number 2.
Yes.
That's right.
Yep.
So just to clarify, this is, again, it's intended to be a friendly amendment, so it's just not changing the substance. It's just underscoring the point, as has been made already, that this is a non-binding resolution. This is exhortative, if you will. This is an advocacy piece, so saying this is the goal, the vision, and clarifying that our respective boards are adopting this plan within, okay, so resolve that the COG and WMATA boards of directors adopt the DMV Moves plan within the approved WMATA budgets and within the approved respective legislative budgets.
Is there a way for staff to make the amendment to this section so we can see it? Is that possible? No. Oh, okay.
Chair Lusk, if I may, Chair Santos, I think you and I were channeling each other. I had a very similar reaction, and I wonder if I could propose some language that I think instead of saying adopts, if we said receives, so the resolve that the COG and WMATA Board of Directors receives the DMV Moves plan and direct WMATA and local agency staff to begin to work to advance the plan rather than implement. So we would say, again, resolve that the COG and WMATA Board of Directors receives or receive, so excuse me, the DMV moves plan and direct WMATA and local agency staff to begin to work to advance the plan. So that would take out the adopt language and implement, which I think gets to the spirit of what you were trying to get to.
Okay, Supervisor Alcorn.
Yeah, I have another suggestion. I think that's a little weak, to be
Okay,
honest.
that's fine, that's fine.
Can we say endorses? So maybe instead of adopt, can we say endorses the DMV moves? Because I think that's consistent with the Northern Virginia Technology Commission's vote couple weeks ago.
If Chair Santos is good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's the intent.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, is there a second to the language?
Sorry, can I just make sure we're all on the
Yeah.
same page as what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So
Point of order,
did I
it's
hear
a
you
friendly
correctly?
amendment. It doesn't need a second to a friendly
Oh,
amendment.
Okay.
Just need both the makers and the seconders of both people who made the motion, second the motion, to agree to the friendly.
I still just want to make sure, a clarification to make sure I
I'm a
understand
little
it.
confused now.
So Chair Stewart, well, I guess it was Santos to Stewart to Alcorn.
Yes.
Am I understanding correctly, what you're proposing is to swap the word adopt for endorses? No other verbiage changes? I just want to make sure we all know what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, so at the top where it says adoption, change that to
Endorse.
endorse too. Yeah. Or endorsement, yeah.
Okay, so I'll go back to Santos first. Then Ms. Stewart, are agreeing to this friendly amendment? Okay, so with that, it's done. So.
Well, you have objections.
Oh.
I don't think there are any.
Are there any objections to that friendly amendment?
It can be accepted as friendly if there are no objections.
Okay. Okay, Mayor Ashton?
Thank you. Just a general question about the resolution. It speaks to, and again, thank you to everyone who's worked on this. It speaks to cost effectiveness and supporting safety and reliability. What I don't see in terms of managing costs and trying to look for additional revenues is leveraging WMATA land where there could be housing at Metro that could help support revenue generation for WMATA long-term, as well as I know some of the green aspects that have been discussed that could help reduce costs. So I'm assuming that this is assumed in this resolution and that's part of your strategy, but I wanted to confirm.
Can we have a response to that?
Is that me? Yeah, I guess the comment I would make on that is Metro has a real estate strategic plan. I would say we had early discussions about actually trying to add additional funding, maybe people may remember, above the 460 that would go specifically to housing and affordable housing at Metro stations. I think most people said, that's great, but we're going to do that by ourselves as jurisdictions, not through a regional kind of ask or a regional scheme to do that. And I will say on the Metro side, our job is to work with our jurisdictional partners to create development, but Metro really does not look at that as a financial, really significant financial piece. I don't want to say that a few million here and there is not important, but in the scheme of things, really our job is to help our partners develop community, and you all get the benefit of tax base that then you can use to support Metro or other important public programs.
Okay, let me just clarify again. Are there any issues, objections to the friendly amendment from anyone here? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to be really blunt. I think endorse is weak.
Okay.
We put all this effort into this.
Okay.
We either adopt this or we don't.
We're going to call for the vote, at least for WMATA first, and then we'll do the cogboard second.
What? So we're going to do.
So
the
with
original
with an
language or
with an
on-
objection, it can't be friendly, so there can be
Okay.
a vote on the amendment now. Correct.
Okay, on endorse. All right. Okay, and it's, okay, all right. just Wilmota Board. Sorry, we got multiple
I
board
know, that's
action
what's
going on
hard.
here.
That's what's hard.
Okay, so Wilmota Board first, which
Yeah.
is, would move approval, please, of friendly modification to replace the word adopt with endorse.
I
Can
would
get-
so move.
Thank you, Director Alcorn. Can we have a vote? Oh, okay, so I can't. Wilmota only. So let's see,
Second.
1, 2.
Second.
Thank you. All right. So there's 6 of us. Sorry, a little messy. All right. So can I please, everyone who's yes, say yes. And there anyone who says no?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay.
Aye.
1 no and 5 yeses.
Do the yeses first. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, no, yes, yes. Okay. Am I missing anyone? Yes. Okay. So that's our Wilmota Board vote, which is, it passes 5-1.
Okay, we'll do the same for the vote for COG. For those on the COG board who are in favor to change.
You need a motion in a second.
Okay. Okay,
Parliamentarian.
thank you. Is there a motion?
Second.
Thank you. And a second from the COG board. All those in favor of supporting the change in the language, please say aye. Aye. Those.
Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed from the COG board?
No.
Okay. Nays? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. That means I'm going to go back and count the ayes. Okay, let's try that again. Those who voted aye.
You believe it's more ayes.
I want to count them now.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and those online. Those online.
Mr. Chairman,
voting
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Okay, that's 16. And
Aye.
17? Okay. And any abstentions? Any abstentions from the COG board? Okay, the motion carries 17-4. Thank you.
Now, next.
Now, the main question. Yeah. On the main motion.
Okay, so next is on the main motion. Does anyone have any, I guess we gonna allow everyone to speak before making their vote?
You can call the question first.
The COG board, I just called the question.
Ah, okay.
Well,
There we go.
okay. Any seconds to the second? We have a motion and a second. Those on the COG board in the affirmative, please raise your hand.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then I will vote 21 in favor. Oh, okay, the 2 online. 3.
Aye, Mr. Chairman, Bailey.
Okay. Again, anyone else online? Anyone else online voting in favor of the motion?
Mayor Ashton, are you still there?
I think there were 3 online, from what I could see.
Correct. I've got 1 vote online. I have 2 more. Are any of the other 2 who didn't vote also in support of the main motion on the floor? Okay, I'll say we've got 22 at this point. All those opposed to the motion from the COG board? Any opposed? Any abstentions from the COG board?
I think this is you.
Any abstentions from the COG board?
We're voting on the main resolution.
Chairman Middleton.
Are you abstaining or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Kevin Dodd.
And so we have 22 votes in favor, none opposed, and 2 abstentions. The motion carries. Thank you. Wow.
Next, for the vote amongst Metro board members on the main resolution. If anyone has any last words before voting, okay. So who's in favor? There's only 6 of us. We can do this. Would you like to? All right, Director Alcorn's making a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Director Smedberg, okay. In favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Actually, yes.
Okay, and you said aye?
Aye.
Yes,
Yep.
okay. Abstentions? I'm gonna abstain, and no nos. Okay, so it passes.
Okay.
What did Debbie do?
Let me start to move quickly here because thank you all again. I also want to thank the task force and the co-chairs, Paul Smedberg and Charles Allen, Randy Clark, Clark Mercer, and all for their hard work on this initiative and making it become a reality. I truly believe this is a huge step towards ensuring an integrated, sustainable, safe, and reliable transit network in our region and will serve our communities for years to come. Public transportation in the DMV benefits every segment of our region, our residents, our employers, our visitors, our employees, our students, and so many others. We owe our communities the continued economic opportunity and environmental sustainability that comes from a robust transit operation. I hope each of you will utilize the funding and service recommendations in this plan and help move them forward at the local and state levels. Now that the joint resolution has been passed by COG and the Metro boards in support of DMV Move's recommendations, the real work begins. So I'd like to recognize our Council of Governments Executive Director, Clark Mercer, to share a few of the next steps.
We're over time, so I'll be super brief. I spoke to this earlier, but I do expect follow-up on the recommendations. If there's a recommendation where your county council or city council needs to take an action, we'd like to visit with you and work on a resolution or action plan to execute recommendations at the local level. If there's something that COG or TPB needs to act on, if Metro's made a commitment here, and then obviously at the state level, we have a number of our partners in the audience. If you are part of the work groups and support this using your voice, you have an opportunity to stand up and say you support the work we have done is really, really important. And obviously working with our executive partners as they put their budgets together. This is about the region coming together and advocating for what's important to the region. And so we'll be in touch and turn this document into an action plan and hope to effectuate the recommendations in the coming months. So thank you.
Thank you. We're abstaining.
But I just want to get to the time. Give us some language so we can talk about it.